Hello, Maria. Hello, George.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It's going dark here.
All right, so it looks like we are right at noon. So let me go ahead and introduce the topic here today and our speaker. In today's Access Lunchtime, we are going to hear about a masterclass in access security, and our speaker today is Colin Riddington. Colin has been an access developer for over 25 years, and he has worked many of his working years in the education spectrum. He has now been an Access MVP 4 years in a row, starting with 2022. He's the president of the Access Europe user group and a member of the Access Forever team. And he's active on many forums. You will see him with the username Isladogs. Is that how you pronounce it? Isladogs.
It is.
Um, and he also has his own YouTube channel and website that he posts lots of goodies and information articles about access on. So this is Colin. Go ahead, Colin.
Thank you, Maria. When I first of all, if anyone was at the UK org conference in London last week, this is a very slightly modified version of a presentation I did for them. And I gave them the title, A Masterclass in Access Security, and then felt that sounded really pompous of me. So I've put it in brackets now. What I'm trying to do today is to show you how you can, within the limitations of what's possible, improve security of your access databases as much as possible. There are a whole series of links that I'm going to give you in the final slides, so there's no need to try and copy them down. But if we move on from here, I'm going to whiz past my background because I don't think that's really what you want to be looking at today. Okay, so the very first statement, and I have to say this, there's nothing I can tell you that will make your databases absolutely 100% secure. That's true for any file-based program, Excel even more so than Access, but nothing I can tell you will make it 100% secure. And so if somebody is absolutely determined, they will be able to break into your databases given sufficient time and the reasons, the motivation for doing it. And at that point, we could say, right, that's my presentation done. There's no point in going any further. But that isn't really the case, because you can make it so that it is so difficult for anyone to hack into your database that unless it is particularly valuable, there is little likelihood they will actually attempt to do so. And that's what I'm trying to show you today, ways of making it difficult enough for them not to bother. But before you actually decide on trying to improve the security, you need to think about what you're trying to do and who you're trying to protect against, because different things would be appropriate for different circumstances. First of all, the first group of people are the authorized users, people allowed to use your database who haven't got a clue what they're doing. And we often refer to them as ID10Ts. They can be a pain. If you design your databases well enough, you can protect against them. A more difficult group are the ones who know a little bit about access and want to use your app to find out a bit more. So they try basically looking into it, trying to see what it does, the meddlers of this world. Then there's people who want to steal your code. I'll call them plagiarizers. They may be authorized users, they may be external users. And then the last group, the hackers, are the ones who are trying to steal your data. Now, I think depends on the sort of clients that we have. I find the second group, the meddlers, are the ones that have caused me most problems. Hackers, only occasionally. If you have been listening to the news recently, and particularly if you're in the UK, you will realise there's been an awful lot of issues with security of IT systems recently. I'm sure it's equally true for America as well. And in a security system for the ideal world, you probably try to protect against all the different areas shown there. I'm not going to read out that slide, but there's an awful lot of things you need to consider. There's 8 things, I think, there. If you miss out one of those and do everything else perfectly, then that one weak area is going to give them a backdoor in. In the UK recently, the large retailer Marks and Spencer's went down in terms of its online transactions for something like 2 months and lost a huge amount of money. They were able to obviously still sell through their shops, but it caused a major problem. Even bigger problem was a motoring manufacturer, Jaguar Land Rover. Basically, the breach to their systems was such that it closed their factories down, it closed down the factories of their suppliers, and potentially we're talking about billions and billions of pounds worth of damages and many, many jobs lost. So security is important, whether Access is your system or any other type of application. The reality, of course, is that systems are not normally anything like that at all. Let's start with passwords. How many of you have been to clients to find out that they're writing passwords on their monitors on post-it pads? This is not that unusual in my experience, that people will be doing memory aids like that. And I saw people doing that, and one of my clients, and I made a massive fuss about it. And they called me back a couple of months later and were really proud to announce that they'd improved their systems, so that they only had one post-it pad because everybody used the same username and password, and they genuinely thought they'd improve things. So I disagreed. Of course, you can take it the opposite extreme. You can make your system so secure that effectively it blows up if unauthorized access is given to records such as patient records and so on. I think in America you've got something called HIPAA. I've probably pronounced that wrongly. And I mentioned about meddlers being the difficult ones. I do everything I can to train them, but no matter what I do, they always seem to want to be actually into the system, and they cause major problems there. Okay, security questions. Well, that I don't think is a particularly good one, but I've seen equally stupid ones in many cases there. So security, if you're going to do it by a question like that, at least make it meaningful. Or you can do it too well, and then people complain they just can't get into the system at all. They've been kicked out, in this case, kicked out of home by the look of it. But one more side of cartoons here. One thing that's often said is that you should obfuscate your code. And in terms of options and so on, sometimes people make the options so complicated that they're impossible to read. Now, I don't know if it's possible for you to read this. It's from a fairly well-known copy systems program, Perigee Copy, and there are so many different options on this screen that by the time I've reached the end of it, I can't remember the beginning. You've got 6 different overwrite modes. You've got 2 different archiving methods, read-only methods. And the last one here, don't waste time adding up the total bytes to copy and get straight to work. No overall progress bar. What? I have no idea what it means. And of course, then you get spoofs of things like this, where you get options and hidden settings. This is from a fairly old version of Access. It asks you, how often would you like me to crash? Would you like me to create incredibly large files? And would you like auto recovery to take blooming ages? Etc., etc. Other options piss me off by applying the same stupid default attributes to every table, picture and object I insert. Yes, you get the idea. Oh, and of course, the paperclip. Annoy me with that when I least expect it. These days, of course, we've gone from the paperclip to ChatGPT and Copilot. And talking clippy, here's a pretty bad taste example I found here. Looks like you're trying to commit suicide. I can help you with that. Please tell me how you would like to go ahead. Anyway, enough of these cartoons. Give you some real advice, maybe. We need to start with basic steps. I'm aware of the people in this audience. Most of you will know most of the steps I'm going to say. Which steps you know will depend on you. In the conference in London, I found at least one item I mentioned not one person in the audience had ever heard of it before. I'll come to that later. But I need to mention the basic steps, so apologies, I'll whiz over these. Of course, you know that you need to split your database and that you should encrypt both the FE and the BE with a password. The reason isn't just to protect your code and just to make it difficult for people to get in. It's also, and I'd say even more importantly in some ways, to protect your data and your code being viewed using a hex or text editor, even Notepad. These are screen grabs from an ACCDB and an ACCDE file, front-end file, and neither of those have been encrypted. And you can see from looking at this, you get table names, I've highlighted some of the important things here. You've got the back-end password clearly visible, and you get exactly the same information visible in the ACCDE version, which may surprise you. In a password-protected ACCDB or ACCDE file, not only is it password protected, but the whole file these days is encrypted, and therefore the contents are unreadable. You can't find passwords, you can't find anything else. If nothing else, that's a good way of doing it. But let me just make clear that that's for ACCDB files. If you use MDB files, depending on the version, they are nowhere near as secure, even with a password, nor with MDE files. Even if they are encrypted, the encryption level is lower, 40-bit rather than 128-bit. But here are, I think these are from Access 97. These are password-protected MDB BE files, and you can see in there, even though it's password protected, you can see field names in the top part, and in the bottom part you can see two of the names of the people involved there, their surname and their forename, and you get the same for all the rest of the data. Okay, so it'll be a lot of effort to work through like that, but none of the data or the fields are protected. And if we go to the password protected FE file, okay, linked to that same BE file, again, it's password protected, but you can still see in there the password. In this case, it was Dinsdale, and you can get all the information you need to be able to open that back end. And of course, if they've got access to both files and can take them away, they can do that at their leisure. So MDB files are really not secure. They got better, but they are not as secure as ACCDB files, yet they're still widely used. Okay, so for your password, it should be long and it should be strong. And for those in the UK, the Andrex puppy advert will be familiar. Basically, I think that gives you the idea. Some of you will have seen this graphic before. It dates back about 3 or 4 years, and it tells you how long, roughly, it will take a hacker to brute force attain your password. If you use numbers, anything up to 10 characters can be done instantly. Probably up to 11 or 12 with modern computers. If you use lowercase letters only, okay, it takes a little bit longer. Upper and lowercase, a bit longer still. A mixture of numbers and letters, longer still. And if you use special characters as well, then longer still. And if we are talking about the most complex password, then with 18 characters, according to this, it could take 7 quadrillion years in order to brute force find your password. It will take them less if they know who will have set the password and has a clue about the sort of things that you're likely to do. But basically, the longer and the more complicated, the better. And so you get ridiculous instructions that you have to follow. And in this particular over-the-top case, and deliberately ridiculous, your password must contain a lowercase letter, an uppercase letter, an Egyptian hieroglyph, blood of a virgin, unicorn skull, and the claw of a mighty dragon. And if you get all that lot in, you're probably secure. Okay, for time reasons, I'm not going to show you the video that was there. I know plenty of places where people set up really complex passwords and then they actually supply the password to the end users, the BE password that is. There'd be no reason for them to know it. And even more importantly, don't store it in either the front end or the back end unless you encrypt it in some way. Going on to the back end itself then. Hide all tables.
Hey,
Don't
Colin,
give them... Yeah.
Can I interrupt you real
Please
quick?
do.
Just for clarity, there are several ways to apply a password to an Access database. You can apply just to the back end or the VBE window, rather, the project. You can apply it from like the file info. Can you clarify how you're talking about when you're talking about applying it?
Yeah, but I was going to do that later. So can you come back? I'll come back to that. And at that stage, if I don't give enough detail, let me know. All right?
Perfect.
Okay. So as I was just saying this now, I would hide all your tables. You can hide them in the navigation pane, but almost everyone knows how to make them show again. You can also deep hide those tables so they never appear in the navigation pane. Deep hiding is a phrase I use. It's not official, but it's widely used. I'll show you how to do that later. Of course, hide the navigation pane. And you should, if you're doing any sort of security, disable all the options that make our life easy, display the status bar, disable access special keys, turn off full menus, turn off default shortcut menus. You should remove privacy options from the file menu, or even better, hide the ribbon completely. If you remove the privacy options, it prevents people easily being able to reverse all of the things that you've done. Otherwise, they can just go in and turn it all backwards. You should also use a strong password for the backend file, and to make it clear, it should be different to that for the front end file there. Many people say, oh, I've made the backend, which is tables only, into an ACCDE file. Well, there's absolutely no purpose in doing that. If it only contains tables, you're not giving it any extra security by doing that, but you still should encrypt it. And of course, I need to say the blindingly obvious point there. If it's file-based, if they can take your files away and in their own time look at them, you're opening up for the real hackers of this world. If your data is mission critical, credit card information, any sort of major financial information, you shouldn't be using Access for your backend. Use SQL Server, which is much more secure, or a similar server-based backend tool. Front end, much the same as the back end, disable various options, blah, 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 blah. Also disable the shift bypass, which you can't do from access options, which is a pity in a way. Always use an ACCDE file. Some people suggest renaming it as ACCDR. Do both, but don't just rename it as ACCDR, because you can rename it back and remove whatever security that provides. As I've already mentioned, use a different password to the front end. The front end password needs to be memorable by users. The back end password, they should never need to know it if you design your database properly. And that should be long and it should be strong. You can apply a VBA project password. That means that anyone who wants to look at your code, if it's not actually encrypted with a password, the file that is, then they will need to apply a VBA project password. The trouble with that is it is trivial to bypass it. We can find ways of hacking it as well, but it's easier to just bypass it. You can find ways of doing that on the internet for free, and I don't even bother to do it because it's not secure. If you want to do it, don't do that as your main security method. Do it as an extra one. I don't even bother. The password I'm talking about in each of these cases then, apart from the VBA one, is the one that you get when you first log into Access. You go in, you open it exclusively, and then from the file backstage menu, you apply your password. You encrypt the database. Does that answer the question you were asking, Maria?
Yes, it does.
Good. Okay. Some people suggest that users should actually log in with the username and a password. I used to do that in my school databases because you wouldn't have just one person using a computer. Effectively, they were hot desking as they move from classroom to classroom. A reason for doing it is to apply access security levels, different levels of security for different people. Those who can just read the data, those who can edit it, those who've got basically the ability to change options and so on. If you are going to use passwords for your users and logins, I would strongly recommend that you use Active Directory for the information to be stored. That is absolutely secure. It takes the pressure off you, and it means that you don't need to store information in the database. But if you don't want to or can't use Active Directory for any reason, if you must store user passwords in your database, make sure that they are also encrypted with a different method and a different password. If you're going to be using a cypher method, better still, use something like SHA-256 where it's hashed and you don't ever need to know the user password. The database just checks that the password they've entered, once it's then encrypted, matches the stored value. And if it is, they get in. So make sure you do a sensible method. There's lots of other things apart from SHA-256. There are various websites where you can find out more about the different methods there. whatever you do, if you are using ciphers, if you are using any sort of encryption, make sure you don't store those in the database unless you further encrypt those. But if you're going to do so, encrypt it with a different method, and therefore they need multiple ways of getting through to find out what those are. Best of all, most important of all, don't actually store any code that will allow people to get in and decrypt all those passwords. Okay. Those are the fairly basic things, many of which you will already know. It's worth pointing out, in case you don't know, that knowledgeable users can do an awful lot from outside your database. By going to an external VBA-enabled app such as Excel or another Access database, they can do an awful lot. The first thing is they can, if you've applied it, they can re-enable a shift bypass. And if they do that, everything else tumbles down like a pack of cards. For example, they can then view the table locations, and in other words, where the BE is, and the connection strings, including any passwords you've used. And it's basically available to open site there. All they need to do is get into your database, link to the MSys objects table in your database, and go to the connect and database fields. And then if you have got a password, it will be shown for both Access databases and for SQL Server databases, unless you're using Trusted Connection, and therefore they can see exactly how to get in. If you aren't using a password, then the connect field is blank. They can still see how to get in. So one way or the other, with Access databases, if they can get to the MSys objects table, that the passwords are there and they are not masked. I wish they were, but they're not. And that's true for ACCDE files, just the same as ACCDB. So it's not at all secure. You need to stop them getting there. Moving on. They can also, having found the passwords, they can remove them, or they can replace them. I've never been able to find a way of replacing them without first removing the password, but once they know the password, then they can do anything they like with it. And they can also, as I already mentioned, bypass the VBA password. It just needs basically one line of code. If you have a startup form, they can bypass it because of the shift bypass thing, or they can change your startup form to prevent that code running. If you've got an auto-exec macro, which, by the way, runs after the startup form, they can then replace that auto-exec macro with something that's either innocuous or even worse, malicious, and then they can cause a lot of damage. So you need to find ways of mitigating this as much as possible. That's an awful lot that people can do if they know how to do it. Within the VBE, now this is where people may start to be surprised. In an encrypted ACCDE file, your functions, your constants and procedures are not readable, but the function names and the arguments are readable. This is from an ACCDE file. It's one where I've just got a list of access or error codes. And you can see here, I've got a list of all of the different modules in that particular application. And for one of those mod functions, I've just clicked on a fairly innocuous one, a formatted message box. And you can see below there, it tells you what all the arguments are. Now that just, in this case, it's not particularly important, but it would be equally true for any more vital function. And then they can having found out the name of that function, then they can run it from the immediate pane. So they can just type in formatted message box, hello world, goodbye security, because it really is the end of your security once they actually know those things. So you need to find ways of preventing them doing that. There are ways of making it difficult to get into the VB editor, I know, but you can actually hide all of that information as well with one line of code. Coming up in a minute. Now, code signing is something that I think is still a minority activity. I've been code signing my projects for about 10 years. Ironically, earlier this year, I let my code signing certificate lapse. And so I'm using self-certificates at the moment, which are not the same thing at all. But if you code sign your project, not only are you making it more secure, but the main thing is it's always trusted. By doing that, it means that your files will always run so that The user doesn't need to enable content when they first open it. It will always run trusted. They can't bypass the security easily. Now, I don't know how many of you know how to actually make your certificates secure, but if I can now find this, it's opened and it seems to have opened somewhere else. The Microsoft Management Console is available in all versions of Windows. I think it's in Home as well as Pro, and it allows you to do a large number of things, most of which I've never done. One thing you can do is you can add the certificate snap-in, and then you've got three options: user account, service account, or computer account. I'm just going to stick with user account for today. And once we've got this, then we've now added that to there. Okay. And you will now see extra item here. Now, when I expand that, you will see a whole series of different things. Those that are built in via Windows, you've got trusted root certification authorities, you've got trusted publishers. If I click on this, trusted publisher here, as well as things that have been trusted for me by Epson, the printer make, and Oracle here for VirtualBox here. I've got two certificates here. That one is a self-certificate, Mendit Data Systems, and this one is my last commercial certificate, which ran out in February. I let it lapse because it was very expensive, and at that stage, I didn't know about something I will tell you about later on. If you want to, you can add another certificate there. Now, when you're in an Access database, if you code sign, you can export the certificate. I've already done that. I'll show you that later. But if I go to here now, and if I right click on that and click import, and now if I click next and I browse to the folder where I am now, I've already got a .cer version here. If I click on all files, I've got different ones here for Isle of Dogs, my own individual name here, and so on. Let's just click on that one. Click next. I can put this in that particular store, or I can automatically select the certificate based on the type. Go to next, go to finish, and now I have added, I hope. Let's refresh. I thought I had. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm in here. Should have an Isle of Dogs one in there somewhere. I've lost it. Things always go wrong in demonstrations, don't they? And I've managed to get this to go wrong there. Okay, I'll leave that one untrusted there. You can add certificates here. If it's a commercial certificate, you don't need to do this. If it's a self-certificate, the only way of actually making it apply everywhere on your computer is to do the management console method here. I'll leave that now and come back to that later if there's time and if there's questions. No. Okay. Moving on. You should prevent users having direct access to the folders containing the BE files in order to prevent them taking the file away. Some people recommend obfuscating module and procedure names even when they're encrypted because of the reasons that I showed you earlier, that you can get to the procedure names and the arguments there. Now, I never bother with that because there is a much simpler method. One line of code in all of your standard and class modules, add the line option private module in the declaration section, like that. You can't do it in form modules and you can't do it in report modules, so they are less secure. But if you do that in an AccessDB file, all that line does in an AccessDB is to limit the scope of your code to that module only. It becomes a private module. But if you do it in an AccessDE file, it has a massive effect. And that is, instead of the screen I showed you before, the object browser now shows nothing whatsoever. They don't get a list of your functions and procedures. They do not, therefore, have any knowledge about the names of your procedures at all. So while you could name your modules mod recipe and the procedures cauliflower cheese or whatever, I don't think this is a much better method. Obfuscating I find difficult because I can never remember what is what. This method means that nobody else can see it, but it's actually invisible to me. When you distribute your files, if you use an installer package, you can get it to add selected registry keys and certain values for those, and you can get your program to check those values at startup. If those values have been changed or if they've been removed, the FE can be made to close automatically. If you wish to, you could also use activation type code so that the app is locked to a specific workstation. If you're selling commercial apps, you might wish to do that. I do that on some of mine. It again means that even if they take the app home, it won't run on their home computer. It will run on the workstation the activation type code will actually apply to. I hide the taskbar quite often while the app's in use because you can get to a lot of things from the taskbar while the app's open. Make sure if you do that, you restore it when the app's closed. Problem only comes if your app crashes. But of course, your apps never crash, do they? You can also, and I'm going to show you this later, encrypt the data itself as an extra step. But to do that, you've obviously got to be able to decrypt it again. So you need to use a different method of encryption. I use RC4, not considered strong enough for high level security in commercial apps, but for the purpose of encrypting data, it's fine. It's 128 bits. You can make a strong cipher, you can encrypt that, and so on. I'll show you that in a while. Okay, on to a couple of demonstrations then. The first one is an app which I devised to just basically show how you can build up levels of security. It's got a small number of objects, including some tables, some of which are hidden, and at least one of which is deep hidden, and you can look at all the modules and the tables from there. Obviously, that's not something you do in an app that you're distributing. The backstage menu is normal. Everything's available there, including access options, and the quick access toolbar is also available as well, and also customizable. This particular version here is unlocked and it's been signed. And if I just go to the Visual Basic Editor and drag this across, is that text large enough, Maria? I forgot to check it earlier. The size of that is large enough, or do you want me to enlarge it?
I think it looks okay. If anyone wants it larger, speak up.
Okay. Going on to the digital signature bit there. Right. Oh, I thought it was signed. Obviously, I've unsigned it here. So I've got 3 different certificates that are available. These are all self-certificates, I said. This one's in my name. If I click on that, I've now applied that certificate. But if I click on detail, it says the CA root certificate is not trusted. I didn't add this one to the certificate store. To enable trust, install it in the Trusted Root Certification Authority store. So it's done part of the job, but not everything there. If I change this now to the Mendip Data Systems one, which I have actually added to the store, you can see a different message. It's intended for the following purposes: ensures software came from the certain software publisher, because I've trusted the publisher. It is protected from alteration after publication. Now, the trouble with the self-certificate is, the good thing is it's free. You can test out the process. The bad thing is that as soon as you move your files onto a different computer, the self-certificate doesn't work. In the old days, I think there was ways where you could make it work on multiple machines. I don't think you can do that anymore. But if you buy a commercial certificate, very expensive, something like £300 for a year, then it is totally secure. It's all just done for you. The reason I let it lapse, my own commercial certificate, was that having paid a large amount of money, when I got to the end of the year and it lapsed before I had a chance to renew it, none of my applications that had been actually protected with a certificate, in all of those cases, it no longer applied. But over that year, sometime about middle of last year, and it wasn't publicized, Microsoft actually added a way where you could timestamp your certificates, and doing that means that your applications will remain protected with the code certificate after it has lapsed. That is something that if I'd known that, I would have continued, and I'm intending to purchase another certificate soon for that reason there. So that's how you sign your certificate. So coming away from that for a second, I've got a list of tables. I've got a normal table. I've got a hidden one. I've got my system ones here, and I've got a number of deep hidden ones. There's one called table types there, which you will notice was not available anywhere in the navigation pane, except you didn't see the navigation pane, did you? No, you didn't. Right. I'm going to open this a different way. If you open Access Apps from PowerPoint without making the location of them trusted, it hides the navigation pane, and I forgot to trust that there. So I'm going to open this directly here, and this time we can see the navigation pane. Okay, now, table 1 there, I can hide it. I'm sure you all know how to do that. For example, that method, or you can do it in code, but I can also now go to the tables. I can unhide that table as well. Navigation options, show hidden objects. There it is, back again. This time I'm going to make it normal, but I'm going to go to the code and show you the same thing. From this module here, show hide. Takes a few seconds to open on this, my old desktop Windows 10 machine, that I can use the same code here to hide that table. So if I do hide table, table 1, and
That's
if you look on the
Castle.
left, table will be really good. What did you say there? I think that was Aid.
Yeah, just that you'd misspelt hide table.
Oh, I misspelled both of them, didn't I? Right. Okay, it's now hidden, that table. It's only visible at all because I've still got that available in the in the navigation options. And if I do show table, there it is, back again. An extra module, though, will show you how to deep hide these tables. So I've got a function here called deep hide. And when I click on that, and I've spelt it correctly this time, it disappears completely from the navigation pane. It will not be visible whether or not you've got system objects shown, hidden objects shown. That table 1 is now completely invisible there. Of course, if you're going to do that, you need to know how to get it back again. So if we go back to this module, and I'm going to, the simplest method of all is just to show deep hide table, and you can see it's back again there. So the reason I use these functions rather than actually just typing out the whole lot is, 1, I make mistakes, and 2, I find it difficult to remember these things. So by writing a function, I just make my life easier. I can also open all the modules from here as well, right? I've arranged it so you can do that. Now, at the moment, I haven't locked anything in this, but I can obviously go to Access Options, and I can, when it opens, current database, there we go. I can then start removing things like that. But I'm just going to change this to actually look at the ribbon, which I've lost here. And I've got a number of different ribbon customizations. This one here will take out the privacy or the access options menu. I can show you the XML if you want to later. Maybe I should do before I close that. So if I go to use this ribbon there, you will be able to see the XML that I've used to hide the access options dialog. I've got other ones here that do a bit more, which I will show you later. So if I now just restart the database by compacting it to force a restart, and now you will see that I've got just the limited menu there, and when I go to here, no longer can you see the access options. You can still see some other things, but you can't see that. Let's close this one completely. Oh, I'm sorry, before I go there, now, though it's not still completely locked down, I can still get into the various modules from here, which means that I'm actually undoing any security I've done, except it's taking an awful long time to respond to that. So let's lock it down a bit better. And if we go on to the next slide here, I've already covered part of this. I'm now going to show you that you can actually just about empty the Backstage menu. Oh dear. You can't get rid of the QAT. If you've got a ribbon, it's always there, but you can disable it. So this time, let me show you an empty file menu and effectively no QAT. Always goes to the backstage view for me at the moment. So now if you look here, I've actually got, apart from my list of recent databases, I've got nothing else visible at all, completely empty. I could obviously change that so none of the recent ones show as well, nothing there. They can't get to anything at all. And also if I go to the QAT, you will see, although it's still there, the only thing I can do with it is put it above or below the ribbon. So they can't customize it, they can't do anything from there. So that's a lot more secure, but I've still not locked it down. And the last one of these I'm going to show you, and all of these are available from my website, I've taken the ribbon away completely. So now it's totally secure. And although you can still, in this one, get to here, that list is locked. The list of tables, okay, they can open the standard ones here, but they can't open any of the system ones or the deep hidden ones and so on. Any questions before I move on to the next part of this?
There was a question earlier that asked why you should hide the status bar.
Because from the status bar, you are able to do a number of different things. I haven't got time to go into the details there. It's just one extra level of security. But from the status bar, they can see, for example, the different form views and so on, or down by the status bar there. So it's just something I do as an extra step. It's one of the access options that you can do. Not everyone does it. I do. Okay. When I first gave a presentation about security some years ago with an awful lot less detail than today, people said, yeah, we understand all that, but we really find it difficult to concentrate on doing security. It's not an exciting topic. And it's not, you're right, it's not an exciting topic. It's an important one, but actually testing security is very difficult. And the main thing to realize is, as I've already mentioned, that if you've got a database where you've secured an awful lot of things, but you've left some areas or even just one area that is weakly secured, then that is the way that the hackers will get in. So in this particular case, the little puppy there, they rubbed my tummy cheek and I told them everything. In order to protect yourself against hackers, you need to try and think like a hacker. What would they do if they were trying to actually hack into my apps? If you can think like them, you will make it more likely that you can secure your databases. This is why often people start off as, if you like, criminal hackers that then become good hackers and actually go onto the right side rather than the wrong side. I decided to set up a series of security challenges a few years ago to try and make the process fun and to try and get people to test out their hacking skills. So I created a series of challenges, which you can find on my website, this site here. The first one is very, very easy. It was actually easier than I meant it to be because I left a back door, which I didn't intend to do. And so most of the people in this audience could probably solve it in 10 to 15 minutes. The quickest anyone claimed to have solved it was 40 seconds, which even knowing the solution, I couldn't do it in that time. So I'm not sure I believe them, but it's easy and it's quick and it's worth doing that one because the others get an awful lot harder, but they are all solvable. Some will be tricky, some trickier than others. If you're good at cryptic crosswords, better still. Here's the one that I do want to show you. It's my Encrypt no strings database. Simple form, which has got details for a number of different people, last name, first name, and so on. Nothing complicated about that. You can add new records, you can edit the records, and there's a total of 2,000 records in there. There's a report that you can look at as well. But, all right, there are things with that I want to mention later. It's a split database. The tables in the back end are encrypted. Every single field, apart from the auto number field, is encrypted, and each one is encrypted differently. So even if you were able to get to the back end, decipher or decrypt one of the fields, it wouldn't help you with any of the other fields there. That's the path for it. Let me try and open it from PowerPoint. And as soon as I do that, you will see the first stage of the security that I'm actually doing for this. So if we try and open this from PowerPoint, it will then open. I've got password. The password I tell people is Isle of Dogs. I wouldn't use this in a real application, obviously. And as soon as I get into that, after a second or two, a message will come up saying, I hope it will come up, it's taking a bit longer than I want it to, security alert. This application cannot be run externally using automation and will now be closed. As soon as I click OK, that has closed there. So the first thing the app is doing is to check whether anyone has actually tried to open that externally. I'm going to open it instead from Explorer. So if I click on this link, you can see that the folder here, what I supply with that application is an AccessUserGroups front end. There's a 64-bit one here. There's a 32-bit one if you want it as well, and a back end as well. Password for the front end is Isle of Dogs. Password for the back end, you don't know it. If you were able to find it out and get into it, you would find all of the tables are, well, actually, there's only one important table, is hidden, deep hidden, and therefore, right, you wouldn't even see it anyway there. But if we open it from here, enter the password again, the next level of security comes in, because it now is checking to see if there's any other Office application open. The first thing it does, though, is it check, and this is for my purposes in development, it's saying the shift bypass is enabled. Do I want to disable it? Well, I would normally have done that before I release it there, but I'll say no and get past that. And you can now see that in the background, come on, respond. Sorry, my machine is slowing down here. You can now see, or you could see, there are other instances of access opening, and therefore it's going to close the application. And in order to run this, I need to close all other Office applications, Excel, Word, PowerPoint, etc., which is a bit of a nuisance for the flow of my presentation, but you will get the idea. So I'm also haven't yet closed Access. I have now. Yep, it's gone. Right, third time lucky. So back in, same one. I'm hoping I haven't got anything open. If, by the way, I open another Office app after this has been opened, then it will detect that and it will again close. So got the same message there because I didn't disable it there. So first stage, you'll see it flashing occasionally because it's doing in the background a timer event, and I still got something open. What have I got open? My PowerPoint. I didn't close it. Sorry, didn't intend that to happen. That's the live presentation bit. So here's the encrypted data, okay, which I showed you in the screenshot before. There are 2,000 records there. On my old machine, I have to go down to the taskbar to get back to this here. Loading the data may take a few seconds. Now, what I've got here is an unbound form. There's actually two sets of controls for each field. The encrypted one hidden in the background and the decrypted one that you can see there. I can edit any of these fields. As you can see, I could add a record if I wanted to. I didn't put in the delete a record bit for simplicity in the demo, but there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to do that there. So if I now click on View Report, you can see all of the data at the moment here. But if I now change to a different record, remember I edited that first one now, and having done that, I should only see just that single record. If I'm going to do all the rest of this, I wouldn't actually allow them to see all of the 2,000 records. So if we just go back to the beginning one, I can't remember the name of now. So basically with this then, I've got a series of different things that are locking this down in different ways. It checks for external access. It prevents anyone getting in using getObject. And I've managed to get it to the stage where I've managed to hide the database completely. So let me leave that and say that it is pretty secure. If we come back to my PowerPoint, slide 20 that you saw there. Now, how that works, you've got a split database, front end and back end, both password encrypted. The back end password is long and it's very strong. There are no linked tables. How does that work? The table used in the front end there is loaded When the form is loaded, no connection strings because I'm using a disconnected ADO. I don't seem to have put that there. A disconnected ADO record set for my form there. The record set is then closed and disappears immediately. You close the form as well. The data is protected using RC4. I give you the RC4 code in the article there, and you can play around with it yourself. What I don't give you is the cipher, and I also hash that, which is why every single field is differently encrypted. Your challenge is to find out the backend password, the encryption key for the RC4 function, and then to prove you've done it, export the backend data, all the 2000 records, to an external application such as Excel, okay, in the encrypted format. You could sit there and copy through all 2000 records if you wanted to do it decrypted. I don't want that. If you are willing to take up that challenge, only one person has solved it so far, and they didn't do it with VBA. The reward for the first person who can do it purely with VBA, if it's possible, is you get a free license for my database analyzer, which I sell for just under 200 quid. If you can do it partially with VBA, I'll give you an upgrade license, so it's 100 quid. But the only person who solved that was somebody from bytes.com who apparently, he told me he used to be a cryptographer for the CIA, and he was incredibly skilled. He showed me his solution. It was amazing. But I'm not going to tell you how he did it for obvious reasons there. But if you can do it with VBA, I want to know because I want to make my application stronger still. Back in 2022, Philippe Stiefel actually used an earlier version of that, and to show that you can never make things absolutely secure, I added many multiple layers after that. Okay, last two slides. I left out an awful lot of things. How you can limit the impact of shift bypass, how you can prevent the impact of get object via automation. I showed you that. Project signing, I didn't go into the detail. Trusted locations, encryption methods, disconnected ADO record sets, which I've used here. They only work for the forms, by the way. So for my report, I use a disconnected ADO record set in a sub-form of my report. So therefore it works in the same way. Different methods applying security and so on. All of those things are available on my website, and I've got a whole series of different links that I will pass on to Maria with this presentation after this, probably tomorrow though, Maria. That's it. Is the time for questions, Maria?
Yeah, I think we can do questions. So if you have a question, go ahead and put it in the chat or unmute yourself and talk. We had a couple questions during here, but I think that Adrian or I answered them.
Neil had a question that he put in part of a thread. How do you anticipate what other programs are potential automation clients? In other words, how do you know if there's an automation client running when you do your check? How do you do that check?
Basically, it's simple and it's tedious. I'm detecting any VBA-enabled application. So all of the Office suite. I wasn't sure about Teams when I set this up, so I included that as well. You can do things like AutoCAD and so on. So unless it's VBA-enabled, you can't automate an Access app from that program there. So I went through the whole lot very tediously, testing them out, and it works. The problem with it is blanket. There are many good reasons why they might want to actually have an Excel file open. You could probably limit it so it would allow a certain Excel file, but not others. But I haven't done that. I've just done a blanket version of it.
You've said you check, but I'm asking, how do you check? Clearly, you go through a list of items that you want to look for. How do you determine if a program is running in your code?
The only way to do that is see if I can load it quickly enough. While I'm loading that, it's going to take me a few minutes to get to that.
Uh-huh.
Right.
So
Should we go on to another question while I'm loading
Yeah, one
it?
other question is how do you disable the shift bypass?
One of the articles in those links tells you how to do that. either within Access or externally. I also show you how to mitigate the effect of doing it. You cannot prevent, if somebody's got access to your database, if they can actually open it externally, they can re-enable the shift bypass. You cannot physically prevent that, because the only way you will be able to do it is to have code running. And of course, once they disabled it, right, they can prevent code running there. But once they have enabled it, you can then check whether the shift bypass has been re-enabled. And if so, you can then close the application down. And again, I've got details for that on one of the articles in my website that I gave there.
Just to be clear, it's a database property.
Yes. You know what I've forgotten to do, don't you?
Close
I've forgotten
PowerPoint.
to open it with this. No, I've done that. I forgot to open it with a shift bypass.
Ah.
Oops.
Come on.
Want to see the code that does the shift bypass? Oh, no, it's a different code you're looking at now.
Yeah, I could do. Yeah, those two external test databases, unlock code databases, those are two of my, if you like, hacking programs there. And I'm not going to show you them. For obvious reasons. Right, mod security. See if it's in here. Try and do this without showing you any passwords. You can see by the names of some of these things here that I've got a whole series of things that will open at the beginning. I can't even remember. I should have checked this first. Checking for password, modify startup props, check shift bypass state. So I check whether it's enabled or disabled. Form open. Now we go from here. Now I'm going to go to the start one. Form. Lots of key codes are disabled. Is the project trusted? Is the location trusted? Oh, I know, it's going to be on a timer event. CheckProcess. Here we go. I've got a procedure called CheckProcess, which will then go through and check. So it checks if Access is open anywhere else. It checks if Excel is open, Word is open, Outlook is open, obviously new Outlook, it wouldn't matter, PowerPoint, etc. So if I go to the CheckProcess one, and it is so long since I wrote this, I'm not even going to attempt to explain it, but it uses WMI, and basically it is looking for a particular application as a running process. If it's open, if it finds it, that means that that particular application is open, in which case it closes down the application.
So the meeting calendar here looks similar to what you had before. All of the meetings are listed from this calendar in the Central Time Zone US time period. Because I am in the Central, it's not very clear or noticeable. But for you, if you're in a different one, notice this says Central Daylight Time. This one, 8:30 Central Daylight Time. This one is actually at like 8:30 in the morning on Friday. That's when they do their time. So if you click on it, it should have your time zone recognized here. I did this from a server in Eastern time zone, and it told me I was in New York, even though I was really in Indianapolis, but it was still my right time zone. And so it will actually show the correct time for your time zone. It's an improvement. So like today, if you go and you click this one and you're not in Central time zone, like if Colin opened this, it should show like 5 p.m. or whatever and show London time or, something like that.
Can I confirm I've just got it opening and it is showing London time?
Yeah, and there is this confusion right now that it looks like you should be able to change the time zone here. That doesn't work. It just recognizes and shows you what your current time zone and translates the time into that. I hope that's clear, and we're going to find out more information about that for November. We are going to have a talk. I am going to present the first part of the meeting on replacing VB script with PowerShell. And then we're going to have one of our frequent attendees. I'm not sure if he's here today or not. I haven't looked. John Clark. And he is going to do the end of it and show us an actual demo of doing this, how he replaced a VB script with PowerShell using, and this is one that starts up an application and gets the recent copy from wherever you're supposed to get it and that kind of thing. A lot of us use VB script for that kind of thing outside of Access, and he's going to show how he did that and pulled that together using ChatGPT. So it should be interesting. And then I think we're not going to have a presentation in December. I'm going to cancel that one. So as soon as we've been trained as leaders on how to edit our events, I will get those two events, upcoming events, updated. Colin, do you want to talk about your upcoming meeting? Is that...
You're presenting on Guy Fawkes night.
Yep.
Good gracious me.
It's going to burn, baby, burn. I'm not. Ynte is. Right. On the 5th of November, Wednesday of next week, we have the wonderfully named Ynte Kuindersma, which is approximately correct. He is going to be showing you how you can use Power Automate to do amazing things with Office applications, including Access. One of the first things he will do is show you how to send emails, including emails with attachments, without using Outlook, without using CDO, without using Microsoft Graph. So he will be doing a whole series of different examples that he will use, and I was quite amazed by the things that you could actually do. So whilst in the past we've used Task Scheduler to automate Access, you can do that, but you can do much more as well. And Power Automate at the basic level is free, although there's some things that you will need to get a license paid for. I think it's £14 a month. So the site will give you more details. It should have I think it will be an excellent presentation. Ynte is an excellent speaker, lovely person. That's Wednesday of next week, same time for most people for everyone in America, but 6 p.m. in Britain and 7 p.m. in Europe. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anything that anyone hasn't got answered, that questions for today's presentation that they would like Colin, if he has time, to yet answer?
I've got a few minutes, but can I just respond to a couple of things about the shift bypass? The code is, as I say, in one of my articles, also the code on how to mitigate the effect of somebody re-enabling it there. Oswaldo O has said, I think it was Oswaldo, said that
Yes.
I didn't know you could actually re-enable it without knowing the password. No, you can't. You've still got to get in to the app in the first place there. But if they know the front-end password, they can then basically unlock it by re-enabling the shift bypass. And it is a access property, but it is one that is only created when you first disable a shift bypass. It's not there automatically.
Yeah, and I typically disable it on my startup so that they can't accidentally just do it and get in there.
Neil is asking how you can bypass the VB project password. You can find how you do it on the internet. You just need to do a very minor edit of the access file. As I say, I'm not going to tell you how you do it now, but it is trivial. It really is.
And that's the VBE password, yes, Colin?
Yeah, the VB or VBA project password, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, not the password for the database.
No, not the password for the database. Password for the database is 128-bit encryption, SHA encryption there. The VBA password is weak, and you could hack it quite fairly easily probably, but you don't need to. You just bypass it. You basically make it ineffective.
So George has his hand up. I know I heard Crystal's voice. Were you trying to say something, Crystal?
I just want to comment on your observation about the change time zone drop down on the meeting page.
Yep.
If you're very patient, it will eventually update.
Crystal?
Colin, really wonderful presentation. Thank you. And I love your analogies, like tumbles down like a pack of cards. I mean, everywhere, all the time. You're just like bringing things to a level that people can relate to and sifting complex ideas to understand. And I do want to say, PowerPoint was a surprising and interesting example.
It's because it was open. When I did it in London, I closed PowerPoint, forgot all about it. It would work from Excel as well. Any of those. Excel would be the normal one.
Yeah, my only problem with that is, I mean, I get it, but that's one of the great advantages to Office Connection and why we're screaming in part for Outlook for the access to the object model to go away. It's a big plus and it's a danger zone, right?
I agree totally. I mean, in any standard app, I wouldn't prevent automation from every one of these applications there. It just depends if you want to do this. I mean, I have used this in a couple of applications. I've not done the entire application like that, but I've done it for certain forms and certain tables there. But there are things here, you can use them if you wish to do so. I'm not saying you should, you can do.
Yeah, in my opinion, if you need to be that secure, you should develop it in .NET or something like that.
Oh, yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, it became a personal challenge to me, to be honest.
Yeah.
Once Philippe showed how to hack it in a live presentation with my permission, I was then determined to improve on it, obviously. So, and I just found, you just find out more and more things. Somebody say, have you thought of this? No, I hadn't. So you deal with that as well.
Thank you very much, Colin. And please consider joining Colin's meeting. I hear there's going to be fireworks. And join us
off screen, I hope. Yeah.
At the end of November for our next Access meeting, talking about changing from using VBScript to PowerShell. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
Maria. Thank you.